Welcome to The Disciplined Life. I'm Aria.
And I'm Coda.
We use our experience as a married couple living in a domestic discipline marriage to talk about the ups and downs of implementing authority structure and domestic discipline into modern relationships.
Let's do it.
Welcome in, everyone. I am on my own today, and on today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about how to customize domestic discipline to fit into your relationship and lifestyle and not the other way around. But before we get started, if you are not already, please do consider subscribing. It helps out the channel a ton. Leave this video a like, leave a comment. And if you want bonus content as well as access to our Discord server, a link to our Patreon is down below. So without further ado, let's get into the topic. So Coda and I were talking the other day, and I asked him the question if he considered domestic discipline in and of itself a relationship style, or if it was something that you incorporate into a relationship style. And it was an interesting kind of topic to talk through, and we kind of came to the idea that domestic discipline is something that you incorporate into your relationship. And so what that means is that you can have a very vast variety of relationship styles that can successfully incorporate domestic discipline into their relationships, even with very unique and different presentations of how they live out their relationship otherwise. So whether you are just starting to kind of incorporate domestic discipline into your relationship or you've been at this a while, I think that it is really important to consider how to make domestic discipline fit into your existing relationship and lifestyle, and not try to make your relationship and lifestyle fit into what you have decided that domestic discipline is supposed to look like. I think sometimes we can, when we're doing research, especially on something that's new, or we're trying to, be the best version of what we want to accomplish, we can look at the examples and the presentations that we find, and we can decide that domestic discipline has to look a certain way. And that's just not true, because every couple is unique and every situation is unique. And so you really need to look at, how does domestic discipline enhance our existing relationship, and how do we use domestic discipline to reach the goals that we have set for ourselves? And so to do that, you really need to consider your priorities. Everyone's going to have different priorities and different circumstances, and you need to consider both your priorities and your circumstances when deciding how to incorporate discipline. So you really want to take a look at your priorities and the circumstances you're in, because everyone's going to have unique circumstances and everyone's going to have priorities that are unique to them and their relationship. So you really want to take a look at your priorities and the values that you hold as a couple and the values that you want to incorporate into your family structure. And consider how domestic discipline enhances and supports those priorities. And then that's how you can kind of look at bringing domestic discipline in as a support system to your relationship. So you really want to consider your circumstances too. Just like priorities, just like the uniqueness of individuals, there are so many circumstances that you can find yourself in as a couple. Coda and I have had so many different circumstances, even within our own marriage, that circumstances are unique, but they also are changing and they're ever evolving. So you need to look at where you are right now, what your circumstances are, consider if those circumstances are expected to change or not, and then look at how discipline can come in and, again, just support you as a couple through the circumstances that you are in, and how domestic discipline fits into those circumstances. So everyone has their own set of challenges, their own set of unique circumstances that they have to consider and work through. And that's going to look different for everyone, but it is possible if you hold the value and you hold the desire to incorporate discipline into your relationship. There are ways to work through almost any circumstance that you find yourself in. It just might take getting a little creative. The next thing that you have to consider is your personality and the personality of your partner, and how your personalities and how your needs affect your goals and affect your priorities, and how those things will affect what discipline looks like in your home. And so you want to consider, when you're setting up rules, when you're setting up structure, when you're setting up consequences and accountability and punishments and all those things, how does that affect the structure of your home, and how does that support who you are as individuals? Because you don't want to go into this with the idea that you're going to change the core premise of who you are, who your partner is, and how you function together as a couple. In order to have a sustainable relationship model that includes domestic discipline, you want to honor who you are at your core, how you function as a couple, while also setting goals to facilitate growth. You need to honor that that is who they are at their core, and figure out a way to work with that personality in order to facilitate positive growth. And so you're going to have to really structure your domestic discipline in a way that honors that aspect of who they are, so that they can feel guided and respected and led in a way that honors their natural inclinations. It's just things that you have to consider when you're setting up your relationship, so that it will be successful in the long term. As a head of household, you want to honor where you are and who you are in the moment, so that you can develop and grow in the areas that you want to develop and grow, but also so that you can lead and you can be the head of household in that process. It takes a coming together of both of you to acknowledge who you are, what your personalities are, what you can develop and grow, and what is just going to be who you are, and make the discipline aspect of your relationship fit those unique qualities, so that you can have that long-term sustainable relationship model. Next thing that you want to do is you want to be realistic, and I think that that kind of goes along with what I was just saying, is look at what you can realistically achieve and change and develop in your relationship, and what is just going to be who you are. Also, be realistic with the goals you set. Be realistic with the circumstances you're in. So you really want to look at what are realistic expectations, what are realistic goals, what are realistic rules, and what is realistic and fair to impose as consequences. So when you're gathering all the information, you kind of have to sift through and pick what will work for you and what will not, because no one source, no one example is going to fit your relationship completely. Every relationship is going to be a unique combination of information that has been gathered, as well as experience and things that they have come to on their own. And that's definitely what Coda and I have found, is that we gathered information, we've tried a lot of things, and then we went through, we picked what would work for us, what wouldn't, and we had to try it. And we had to go through this process of trial and error to find what really stuck for us. And that's what I would encourage you to do too. You have to go through, sift through the information, find what you think is going to work for you. But then at the end of the day, you have to try things before you really know. You may think that, you've done all your research and you've gathered all your information and you are the most prepared that you could possibly be. And then when you actually implement those systems, they still might not work for you. And it is okay. It is okay to say, you know what, we tried this and it's not working. We need to either tweak this or we need to just push this to the side and try something completely brand new. And that's okay. Those trial and error periods are necessary parts of growth and are necessary to bring domestic discipline into your relationship in a way that is sustainable, in a way that supports your relationship, and in a way that honors who you are as a couple, who you are as individuals, and where you are and what your goals are. Because at the end of the day, this is not a competition. No one should be going around and comparing their relationship to other people's relationships, their domestic discipline to what other people's domestic discipline looks like. Things that work for Coda and I, we share on this podcast so that that's just another source of information. That's another example that you can look at and say, is that something that could even remotely work for us if we tweaked it a little bit? Or is that just something that absolutely does not work for us? And that's really what it's all about, is you want to gather examples and you want to gather information so that you can say, these two examples do things completely opposite to each other. What would work for us? What do we feel more drawn to? Or do we want to intermesh aspects of both of these examples into some unique third option that we can try? And then try it out for a while. If it doesn't work, throw it out or tweak it, figure out what does work for you, and eventually you will start to learn yourselves as individuals. You'll start to learn how you function as a couple. You'll start to figure out how discipline can come in and support the growth and goals that you want to see. You'll start to understand your priorities. You'll start to share priorities. And then you'll start to get to a point where you don't have to go through those trial and errors. You will have already established systems in place that have stood the test of time. And if you do want to implement something new, you'll have a better understanding of what does and doesn't work. But that takes time and that takes experience. So don't get discouraged in the process of it. It took Coda and I 2.5 years to really solidify where we are right now. Where we are right now is we are in such a good place. And I know that part of that is that we went through trial and error. We tried a lot of stuff. We finally found a system of accountability and discipline that really works well for us. We found a system of rules that really work well for us. We found how the priorities and standards work well with our rules so that even in busy seasons, we still have standards in our home. We still have accountability. Punishments make sense for what we've got going on otherwise. And we have just found a system that works well for where we are and what we're going through. And as our circumstances change, we will change and tweak and adjust our systems to fit those circumstances in the future. But to get to that place, we had to have a lot of communication and a lot of open-minded experimentation and the willingness to change and to adapt to get to the place where now I feel like things are at a point where it is working really well. And part of that process of finding what worked well for us was our boot camp. That really did help us have this like concentrated period of being able to go through this whole process where it's like, okay, how is discipline in our relationship functioning? How do we want it to function? And how do we bring it into our relationship in a way that propels us forward and not holds us back? How do we incorporate discipline into our relationship in a way that honors who we are as our individual selves, as well as who we are as a couple and where we want to go? And so that's all I would encourage you with this is look at your circumstances, your personality, your goals, your priorities. Look at who you are as individuals. Look at who you are as a couple. And consider all of those things when you are trying to figure out how to bring discipline in a way that is supportive of those goals. Be realistic when you are looking at all of those things so that you don't set yourself up for failure. And then just go through the trial and error process of trying things out, getting experience, learning about yourselves and your relationship, and learning how discipline functions within that. And keep what works, discard what doesn't, and don't get frustrated in the process because that just takes time. Consider going through a boot camp if you have that ability, because it really will kind of propel you forward, because it's just a concentrated time where you can go through all of these processes and propel your relationship forward a lot quicker. Boot camp is not something that is necessary, but it can, if you're like us and you want to see results very quickly, it can lend itself to that. Otherwise, just honor your uniqueness and don't compare what you're doing to anyone else. Only ever look at what you're doing in a lens of, is this working for us and for our relationship? And is this honoring the goals and the priorities that we hold? All right, guys, that is all I'm going to say about that. Again, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and you can find the information for our Patreon down below. Until next time, bye.